Hello, everyone, and welcome to It's Kind of a Funny podcast. My episode today is called My Celluloid Heart, The Good and Bad History of Hollywood. So I was sitting there the other day, sitting here at my house, and driving around when I drive around, and I'm thinking about how much I love movies. And I was also listening to Those Movie Guys podcast, and the guy on there, Joe Merle, one of the guys, talked about how he kind of got away from. He got into more reviewing movies and shows, and didn't really get into he wanted to go back to basics of loving movies because you love movies. And that hit me in a certain way where I was like, yeah, I love movies, and I should, the whole reason of starting the podcast in the beginning, as I've explained, and I'll make it a little quicker this time when I tell the story, is that my whole point in the beginning, it was going to be called My Celluloid Heart and the Kitchen Sink, because we would talk about movies, because I love movies, and then we would talk about everything else, weird history, weird things, whatever's going on in our life, observations, whatever, weird stuff. So I thought, oh, that'll be great. Then I thought, that's a really big title for a podcast, although it's kind of a funny podcast, My Celluloid Heart and the Kitchen Sink. It's about the same numbers. But my dad then said, solenoid, is that solenoid? There's a solenoid in a car. People aren't going to understand what celluloid means, because he didn't know what celluloid means. And granted, they don't make film out of celluloid anymore, but my whole point was celluloid, because I love movies, My Celluloid Heart. What I've realized also just now while making notes, putting up an Instagram to promote this episode, was I could get rid of the My Kitchen Sink and the Kitchen Sink and just call this My Celluloid Heart. So what I may do, still kicking it around, because I still like the shows me and Sean do, me and Joe do, and whoever else, Colleen, whatever. So what I may do is have in the middle of the weeks, or in, maybe every other week, I'll do My Celluloid Heart, and I'll talk about my favorite films. And on the other weeks, I'll just do me and Sean, me and Joe, and we'll talk about other things. But being as I have Movie Pass, my wife and I go to the movies about 2 or 3 times a week. And she said, you should do like a review show, like where you review these movies. And I said, well, you know what? Maybe you're right. But I kind of didn't want to get in the niche of just doing a movie podcast, because there's a bunch out there. And I want it to be good. And I know that when you have a bunch to choose from, what are you going to choose? And then that's my thing also when it goes back to what I do, which is me and Sean or me and Joe talk about what's going on in our life, what we're doing, and goes from there. So it's kind of just different. So I like that. And in fact, that leads me to my next story, which is I met a fan recently. Sean and I talked about it, and Joe and I, when I read the email from this guy named Chris. And he had said that he found my podcast and started listening to it, and it reminded him of the way he talked to his friends when he was growing up in Nevada. And so he said, would you like to meet sometime? And I'll, take you and your wife out for dinner, or you and one of the co-hosts out for dinner. And at first I was like, what's, it's always, with the world today, it's too good to be true. Not too good to be true. More of a, what's going on? What does this guy want? Is he going to sell me something? Something's up. So I wrote him back and I said, yeah, he said, I know this may come off as weird. If you don't want to do it, I understand. I said, no. I said, it is weird. I wrote him back. I said, it is weird. I don't know what you're trying to sell. He said, I could sell you something if you want, but he's not selling nothing. He said, I'm just going to be in town doing business at a convention, and thought that we could meet. I said, okay, cool. I said, my wife's not going to make it because she's working that night or whatever she was doing. And I said, the co-hosts, they're all working or it's too late, so they can't meet. So he's like, okay. So I said, it'd just be you and me. Everybody, of course, oh, Philip, be careful. Be careful. The guy's gonna, this is how horror movies start. This is how Dateline episode begins. As the guy went to meet somebody, hi, I'm Chris Hansen. And, well, Chris Hansen, that's more of a, hey, why'd you bring the beer to meet Philip? Why'd you bring beer and condoms, Chris, to meet Phil? Why don't they're just, I don't know, I just had him. Anyway, what do you mean he's 14? So I get there and I meet him. I show up, we exchange phone numbers. And I said, hey, I'm here at this restaurant. He said, I'm inside. And I walk up, and there he is at the front door. But I walk on by him because I'm not sure because he said he was inside. I'm hanging out inside, and then he's like, walks in from outside. And he's like, hey, are you Philip? I said, yeah. Are you Chris? He said, yeah. I said, should I search you for weapons? He said, no, we're good. So I said, all my friends are saying it's weird. I said, I'm totally for it. I said, my wife says you got one fan of the podcast, so why not meet the guy? And I said, exactly. I said, my cousin said, have fun with it, just, And he goes, yeah, exactly. He said, I got some free time, so I thought we could meet, have some dinner, have a good meal, and have some good conversation for an hour or two. I said, I agree. So we met, sat down, and he told me about him and his history, and he used to jump trains. Oh, that used to be one of my dreams. It's still probably one of my dreams. I wish I could jump on a train car, like a box car, and just take it, somewhere. I don't know where, and then jump off of it. I was like, that's free travel. Instead of being homeless where you would have money, you take some money with you. You get on the train. You go to Houston or Austin or L.A., whatever. I don't know, wherever a train goes from here in Phoenix. You jump off, you have a hell of a time there in L.A. or wherever, or Boston. Boston, I wouldn't go that far. But you go wherever. Then you jump back on the train, come back. You've saved all that money for traveling, and, you have a story to tell. And he said him and his friends used to jump on the train, on the boxcars, all the time. And one time they made a mistake and got on the wrong one and went way out of the way. And I said, oh, shit. So we had some real good conversation and all that. And I told him, hey, if you ever want to be on the show, you could call in. We could do the show that way, whatever. Any topic you want to talk about, whatever. He told me about a website to find some weird news stories, all that good stuff. So it was a good time, and we left, and, he paid for dinner, and it was just a good time. So I wanted to tell you about that. And then, of course, when Sean and Joe are on, I'll talk to them about it because I'm sure they want to pick on me about it. Because they're the type of guys, they would never have went. If Sean went, he would have, I don't know, he would have brought a gun. He would have had the guy meet him at a mall. Sean would have went in there with a gun packed heat, and been like, hey, we're in the main big public, I'll meet you in a library or something weird. But, I was like, no, we're good. We met at a restaurant. Everything was good. The other thing that I'm still trying to figure out a good format because, and I know I've talked about this till, I'm blue in the face and you're all tired of hearing it. But with Joe and I, we used to talk movies all the time. Whenever we talk, it was just movie talk. And then it was like, we need to talk about other stuff. One day we were talking about, he was telling me about this documentary about ants and fire ants and different kind of ants. And I just remember going, I love that shit. I love documentary, Discovery, stuff like that. And Discovery Channel. As I love stuff like that. That's cool that he is telling me the story. And in the back of my head, I'm going, oh, my God, should I say that, this is cool that we're not talking about movies? We're talking about ants. And this was, years into our friendship. We've been friends now 40 years. And this was 20 years into our friendship that we start telling probably even 30 years into our friendship. And we start talking about ants. And I'm going, dude, we're not talking about movies. He goes, yeah, I know. And then we we were on our way to a movie, so then we got to the movie theater, talk about movies. What else is funny is when Joe and I'd be at the movie theater, we'd hear people talking in front of us about movies, like young kids, and we were like, what fucking nerds, like these guys. First of all, they didn't know what they were talking about. Second of all, we were like, what the fuck? But then we were the exact same guys doing the exact same thing. So it was just funny. So anyway, my thing about the format is like Sean and I love doing the weird stuff. Last podcast on the left, they'll do serial killers, they'll do whatever. I would love to do serial killers, but there's a bunch of serial killer shows out there. I would love to do movies. There's a bunch of movie shows out there. So that's why I kind of feel the middle ground is movies and other topics. So like I said, I'll probably do my own little movie, My Celluloid Heart, in the middle of that. Maybe. I'll have to figure it out. So that's that. I'm kind of kicking that around. The other thing is, I talk about, Sean and I do those commentary tracks, and we have fun doing it. And Sean gets a real joy out of doing these shows. And it's like Sean will sit down and we go to do a show and we record a show and we have fun at the end of it. Him and I will go, hey, that was a good show or whatever. Or it could have been better or whatever. We'll be honest with each other. But then when he comes on to do those commentaries, he's legit excited and happy and like loves to walk down memory lane. The happiest that I have ever seen him, as I said on that one podcast, was when I showed him the intro to the cartoon Mask. He Mobile Armored Strike Command, I think is what they're called. He was like, oh my God, that made my week. Like that just made him so happy. So that was cool. So when he showed up and we did Chopping Mall, he was all excited. Him and I hadn't seen the movie. But when we put on The Golden Child recently, him and I were both like, I haven't seen this forever. He's like, me neither. And it was just, he remembered a lot of the lines that I didn't even remember and all that kind of stuff. So it was really fun. But that's why that Golden Child commentary is really kind of us just more watching the show than we comment on it, but we're more into the show. Like, wow, we haven't seen this for a while. So we're going to, Sean, we talked about later that we might do a Charles in Charge commentary, although that's 21 episodes. So we might do 2 in an episode of a podcast, but I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. Some people watch the show and then do the podcast on talking about what was in the show, and other people watch the show and do the commentary on it while they're watching it. So we may do that. Still haven't figured it out. I still got Real Genius sitting here. We're going to do Real Genius. Although that's one that you're going to have to buy or rent or own to watch. Same thing with Golden Child. Golden Child's not on Hulu, anything. You got to rent it or buy it. So I bought it on DVD. Same thing with Real Genius. But anyway, things that have really gotten to me this week and this past maybe month and just all my life have been, if you've heard me talk with Joe, I talk about old shows that I grew up on and old TV. So the other day, I was watching something that I watched recently. Let me give you a list, and then I'll go back to what my whole thought is on this. So the other day, my wife's gone today to work. She was gone before to work, and I said, I'm going to watch that. And that's when I can watch whatever I want. Usually I want to watch something that she wants to watch, make us both happy. So we'll watch murder shows, Dateline. We'll watch, ID channel, whatever. But when she's gone, I know that, or asleep, I know that I can watch old black and white movies. I can watch documentaries about shit that she doesn't care about or whatever. So the other day, I found a Three Stooges 75th anniversary documentary on Amazon Prime from like 2003. It was right before the Three Stooges movie came out that the Farley brothers did. And it was hosted by Woody Harrelson, and Woody Harrelson was doing silly pranks and being, slapsticky. and in a movie theater, he's showing it, and then they'd show clips, and then they went with the Three Stooges all the way through when they were with Tim Healey or Ted Healey, um, all the way through. Ted Healey was the one that brought them together, and it was Ted Healey and the Three Stooges. In case nobody knew this, I had already known this before I watched the documentary, but for those of you who don't know, Ted Healey brought the Three Stooges together, and they worked for him. And then they did movies, and he tried to be in the movies. The movie company did not like Ted Healey, and they were making enough money now where they got rid of Ted Healey because he didn't have what they had, and he was more the straight man to their zaniness. So then it became where Mo was kind of the front man, and they were the two sidekicks. So, but I watched that, and I thought, and that was the 75th anniversary. And and that was 2003. Like I said, now we're 15 years later. So now what? It's the 90th anniversary, and they showed on that where they went to like a little country, little town in Africa, and they were playing Three Stooges shorts, and the kids were still laughing and got a kick out of it. So my thing that I got on recently is our history being lost to the ages. Like Three Stooges, yeah, they're known, but is there going to be a time when the Three Stooges just go away because nobody really gets it? Because nobody just the slapstick or zaniness or people hitting each other is not as funny, or it's just old. People don't like the footage. Is there going to be a time that happens? And that's what leads me to all of this stuff that happened recently that really, So before I get to this next thing, my wife and I, and other people, I might mention, to Joe, Charlie Chaplin. Joe might like Charlie Chaplin, but I don't know if Joe's ever seen a Charlie Chaplin movie. I can mention to Sean Buster Keaton. He might know what he looks like, but he wouldn't know. Never seen his work. Maybe I showed Sean the general once or part of it. But my thing is that, and granted, it may be people that I'm hanging out with. There may be everybody out there, or anybody listening to this podcast may go, yeah, I know Three Stooges. I love Three Stooges. I love Buster Keaton. I love Charlie Chaplin. I get it. But my thing is, a lot of that older stuff from the early 20th century is going to be lost in time, or just lost where there's people now at the age that they are of a generation that was born in the 90s who only like movies that were made in the 90s in their lifespan. My wife does not really like going back to watch any movies older than 1981 because she was born in 81. And even in the 80s, some of those movies are, a little, but, that's what I wonder. So recently, I go to this place. It's called the Film Bar. Let me speak a bar and let me have a sip of my beer. So I go to the Film Bar, and it's a movie theater in back of this bar. So you get your drinks at the bar, go into this little one movie theater, bunch of older seats or like regular chairs, and then they got tables that you can sit at, or you could sit at high top tables. So there's a movie called Saving Brinton, and I thought, wow, what is this? Who is this guy? What is this about? And it was a documentary, and I watched the trailer, and it was about a guy who found all of this person named Brinton. It was Frank and Indiana Brinton, and they used to travel around in the late 1800s, and they would show movies and do little shows on at theaters. So you would go to a theater, you would sit down, they had a projector, and he found their projector, he found all their old posters, all their old films that they used to show, like all kinds of stuff. And then they would not only show films of what they did find is some George Millay, or Malays, however you say his name. If you don't know him, he did a movie in 1902 called A Trip to the Moon. It's on Netflix in color or black and white. It's like 14 minutes long. You should check it out if you like movies. It's interesting because it's like the beginning of movies. And this guy's vision was so great. It was also in the movie Hugo. Martin Scorsese kind of used Ben Kingsley as kind of that guy, the George Malays, or he is the guy. But anyway, they found some film in canisters that luckily made from nitrate, celluloid, that's highly flammable, that's highly degrades like really quick. So they found this stuff. They scan it, get it scanned really well, and put over to a hard drive. They show this French guy who knows all of Malay's films. This French guy is so happy because he's only heard about these films, these film clips, and they're not even that long, maybe 10 minutes of film footage that he's like, we thought that these were lost, but now we found them. And it was like really cool for a film lover. Like, that was awesome. And so now they're part of, they incorporate him into the movies and stuff. Then this guy, that's the documentary's about, the guy that found all their stuff, that got it, it was in some estate auction, and he went and found it. And he decided that he wants to make this happen and, like, make this guy, Saving Brinton. He wants people to remember Frank and Isabel Brinton. And so he travels around then and showed, like, that clips of the film. And it was, like, double exposure stuff and, like, all this stuff. And then also they would do, like I said, a little play or a dance number or some music and whatever. And it was all kind of an all-media type thing. Not even, media didn't even exist, but you know what I mean. And it was really cool. So I went and saw that documentary. My wife, of course, was like, whatever. And, I know Joe would go, you watch anything. And Sean would go, I don't give a shit about that. So that was interesting. Then the other day, like I said, this all leads me down this rabbit hole. Not a rabbit hole. I've always been on this. I've always loved Burns and Allen, The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, like all these shows. But then I'm at home the other day, and Danielle was asleep, and on Amazon Prime I found, because I watched that Three Stooges, thing popped up, said you may like, it's called Stan. It's a made-for-TV movie from 2006 about the last days of Oliver Hardy and how hard it was on Stan Laurel, and tells the history of, like, how they came together, how they became Laurel and Hardy. And I knew the story, like I said, of when Hardy died. It was real hard on Stan Laurel, and Stan Laurel just, like, almost went into a depression for, like, a long time after his friend died. And so this movie is, like, the last, like, week of them being together, or maybe the last day when Stan goes to visit Oliver Hardy, because he's been putting it off. And after Oliver Hardy died, Stan Laurel, this is what I read later, Stan Laurel decided he was never going to do, like, the hat thing. He was never going to do, he would never, not the hat thing, he would never do, people offered him gigs in movies to do, like, Jerry Lewis offered him to write gigs for him, and he turned him down. He was going to pay him like $100,000 to write comedy gags, and he didn't, and he just chose to never do anything again because he's not as good as he was with Oliver Hardy. So these comic duos that you always had. So, like, and then there's, on that same note, years ago, with all these old comedians, I went down a rabbit hole years ago when Benny and June came out, and Johnny Depp was dressed as Buster Keaton and did the roll dance in the diner like Chaplin does on The Gold Rush. And I was like, oh my God, that is, he did it exact. And he had told stories that, he watched those over and over to get them right. And what so then I went down a rabbit hole, and this was back before you had Netflix or Amazon, where you could just look up something, or YouTube, where you could look up something and watch an old Buster Keaton doing something. So I had to find these. So I had to go to the library, found a bunch of Buster Keaton. I bought a Charlie Chaplin box set that I had, and on there were short films and regular, the full length. There were a couple full length, or the Gold Rush was on there, and then I found all the shorts. And the best short that I loved, if you look it up, please do. It's called 1 a.m. by Charlie Chaplin. He comes home from the bar, totally drunk, 2-story house, and all those gags he's worked out are so great. And it's just him trying to take off his clothes and get ready for bed, pretty much. And, oh, it's a riot. Another one that's pure genius is Buster Keaton. The movie The General that I just mentioned is like, it's a train. It's, the Civil War, and, full-size trains, and they're doing these stunts. And Buster Keaton would do these stunts, and what happened way back in the day, he would do these stunts, and he would act like he was afraid or whatever when he did something. And then they realized, no, it works better if you just are stone-faced like you do. That's where he got the name Stone-Face. And you don't react. You don't show that you're almost in danger, because that's what's the excitement for the audience, is seeing that you almost got hit by this house that fell over, but you were standing just right where you went right through the opening. So that was great. And then, like I said, old shows like I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, Burns and Allen, Jack Benny, all these movies, all these shows. So, like, I like the history of Burns and Allen. I was watching Burns and Allen the first time that I saw them. I bought them. It was Walgreens had, like, for $1, you get Burns and Allen, 2, 3, 4 episodes. So I went home, I put it on, I'm watching it. And in the middle of them doing this, I didn't know, or I had forgot that this is how TV worked, was Gracie is cooking food or something. The neighbor comes over. The guy who's like George's manager comes over and says, "Hey, Gracie, what's going on?" And she says, "Oh, nothing, and just cooking." And he goes, "What are you cooking?" She tells him. He goes, "Have you ever tried this?" And he opens up his briefcase, and he pulls out some Carnation evaporated milk. And he says, "Have you used evaporated milk before?" And she's like, "No." And they start talking about the evaporated milk. He's telling her how to use it. And I'm going, this is weird. Like, why did they jump over to this evaporated milk? And then you watch another episode, and they do the same thing, but in a different way. And it's like, oh, Carnation evaporated milk was their sponsor, and they had to throw it in there. Just like on a podcast when somebody will jump into, oh, Casper mattress, da-da-da. It was just like that, except they would keep the show going and just play like that was part of the show. So it was really interesting. But things like that I love, that my wife will go, "What are you watching?" I'm watching Burns and Allen. Like I said, a lot of people would go, "This is black and white. This is not funny to me because it's the old sense of humor." Jack Benny show, his humor was that he was a really good violinist, but he really wasn't. I mean, he probably was, but for comic effect, he wasn't good, and it was horrible. And so he would play, and it was, it was a whole thing. And Rochester was his manservant, and anyway. And then I looked into Rochester. Rochester, if you didn't know this, probably not. Everybody's like, who's Jack Benny? Rochester ended up like having bought a big house in Beverly Hills that, first black guy to like have a big house in Beverly Hills. Like, amazing. Same thing with that Hattie McDowell. She won an Oscar for Gone with the Wind, being the slave woman. And she won an Oscar, and that was 1939. And she wins an Oscar. Like, that's amazing. But what gets me is the history of it, that I mean, is like all the old stuff. Like, they'll have old. There was a thing on Maltese Falcon. He's got like a ball, kind of ball type shaped thing sitting on his desk, Humphrey Bogart. And when he goes to light a cigarette, he pulls a match out and he sticks it in a hole in the middle of that ball type rock, whatever it is, and it lights his lighter. It lights his match. And then and I was like, oh my God, like that's a cool little thing. I would love to have that. Or I would love to have some old props from old movies. Like, forget about the new movies. Forget about getting me something from the set of Star Wars The Last Jedi. Get me something from the Burns and Allen set. Something from, I Love Lucy, whatever. Like, it's way cool. So like, that's what I'm getting. Like, yeah, everybody's liked I Love Lucy for years. And since the 50s, since it was on, all the way through now. But when we were younger, I'm 46, when I would stay home from school, they would play on TV I Love Lucy, Hogan's Heroes, all these old TV shows, Mr. Ed, which I hate Mr. Ed, but all these TV shows they'd play, and it was like, and that's, so me as a kid, I kind of remember those, and I kind of maybe grew to like those. But kids now come home, and you have cable, so maybe you don't have reruns. If you have reruns, they're newer shows. They're not going to be, there's going to be kids, of course, who grew up in the 2000s who are going to go, oh, yeah, I grew up on reruns of Friends or 70s Show or Two and a Half Men, like all that. But not really, like I don't have cable, so I have regular TV and with rabbit ear antenna. And on there, they play all these old shows because they're free and you can play them. So they'll have old movies and old TV shows. And so for people who like it, that's cool. But for people who don't or don't care, it's, my point is this going to be lost to history? These old shows, granted, like I said, I Love Lucy, maybe not. Like the Three Stooges, maybe not, because they are the Three Stooges, Chaplin, Keaton, like all those, maybe not. But what if, like, pretty soon people are going to go, I don't get it. I get that it's old and it's supposed to be great, but I don't get it. But I went and saw The Great Dictator ran at the museum here in Phoenix Art Museum. And it was a free screening. And we went in there. I went in there. I was by myself. But the thing was packed. And people were laughing at all the old jokes, all the old stuff. Like, it was great. People loved it. So, maybe I'm talking myself out of what I'm thinking, but I'm just worried. I'm really worried that all these history things are gone away. And then I like to watch the old film noir movies, like ones that aren't even like the big ones, like not The Big Sleep or like I said, Maltese Falcon, but more like the DOA or, all these ones, or even like tonight, another rabbit hole that I went through after all the comedians was a Jackie Chan rabbit hole, because I was on a Quentin Tarantino thing when Pulp Fiction came out, and I wanted to know everything about what movies Quentin liked, who he liked, and one of them was Jackie Chan. And it was hard to find Jackie Chan movies until he came out with Rumble in the Bronx, and then all of his movies were released. And just now, before I started recording this podcast, Armor of God was on TV, which was Operation Condor and then Operation Condor 2. And Armor of God was the first one, but they put it out as Operation Condor 2 because the second one had already came out. So isn't that silly? But anyway, I digress. But all those, Hong Kong action movies, like the best movie experience, now I'm getting into the movies, best movie experience that I ever had was my cousin says he's going to rent a movie. It's called The Killers, and it was at the comic book store, and he rented it, brought it home. John Woo directed it. We had no idea who Chow Yun-fat was. Had no idea who John Woo was. And we put that on. It was like early in the morning, like we were doing whatever we were doing. And then about 3 in the morning, we put it on, 2 in the morning, whatever. And we watch The Killers. And it is amazing, as they say, ballistic ballet, whatever, bullets flying, 2 guns, like slow motion, doves, all the stuff that John Woo's known for came from this. Before this was, Better Tomorrow, stuff like that. Better Tomorrow 2. So I was like, oh my God. So we got done watching that. My cousin goes, I'm tired. I'm going to bed. So he went to bed. I went to my aunt and uncle because we were watching it in the main living room. I said, hey, guys, can I continue watching, because they were up at that time. I said, can I watch that again? And they were like, sure, go ahead, because they were just sitting in the bedroom watching TV or movies. So I went ahead and rewound it. That's how old it was, video. Rewound it, watched it again, and that thing was amazing. And I own it now on Blu-ray, and I have hard boiled on Blu-ray, and that movie changed everything in me. Like the movie, like falling in love with John Woo. Then I went down a rabbit hole of Chinese action movies, like Chow Yun-fat movies. Like then I found Ringo Lam direct movies. I found other John Woo movie, Bullet in the Head, Better Tomorrow 1 and 2, Hard Boiled, and then he came and did Hard Target, and then Face Off. And Face Off at the time when that came out was like, that was the best thing ever. Like that whole sequence of Somewhere Over the Rainbow with the slow motion guns and shooting was amazing. And then when I heard John Woo was doing the Mission Impossible 2, I got so excited and would watch that trailer all the time. I had the soundtrack. It was like, and then you see the movie and it was still like, wow, it was cool. I don't know about the motorcycle thing, but cool. And then now you look at it and you go, but at the time it was John Woo. Like, I fucking loved it. And then what else got me on this that, I was sitting there thinking, well, what should I podcast about? I don't really know. And then I realized, I was looking through Netflix last night after I watched, did I watch? Anyway, I watched something last night on Netflix, and then, they have LA Confidential on Netflix. It's a fucking great movie. If nobody's seen LA Confidential, stop right now. Go watch that movie. The Departed, of course, is great. The Kingdom is great. I don't think they have Signs. I just wrote down movies that I like. Signs, North by Northwest. I have this whole Hitchcock collection. Another thing that I went down a rabbit hole of Alfred Hitchcock. Then I got a book that Truffaut did on Hitchcock, and it was like an interview. It was just really good. They did a documentary now recently about it, but really good. And then, so I'm just worried that maybe not the old movies, but maybe the B movies might get lost because just people are looking for the next new thing. And especially with the way the world is now, with you can only retain 100 things at a time, I think is what I heard in your brain. And people are only hearing about, what should I watch? Well, you should watch Game of Thrones. Never seen any Game of Thrones. You should watch Game of Thrones. You should watch, Luke Cage. You should watch the new Gordon Ramsay. You should watch, whatever, fucking Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. People are on to the newest things, and people aren't on to the older things. It's like Joe has his son watch older movies, but not necessarily black and white movies, but older movies that Joe grew up on. So recently his son wanted to watch some Alfred Hitchcock. I forget if it was Psycho, Rear Window, or what. So he borrowed my Hitchcock collection. It has 17 films in it. And his son liked what he watched, but he hadn't watched Rope or anything like that. But it's those things where pretty soon kids don't like kids, whatever you call them, you have to love the old stuff. And is that love going to go away is what I'm getting at. And I hope somebody will answer me, write me an email about it, because I'm kind of worried, but I know I sound like an old man who's going, man, is anybody going to care? You know, it's like, so anyway. But something else now that I wanted to get at that I wrote down here on my notes was I find myself wanting to watch TV shows and movies that I grew up on. Now, the question I have for everyone, is that what a midlife crisis is? Or is it because some of my happiest times in life were when I was a young teenager? So like when I went and saw my house, if you're a fan of this podcast or if you've listened to the podcast before, you've heard me say that I went and saw my old house and that the lady let me in where I grew up when I was little. Somebody else lived there now. 6 a.m, I said, can I come in, look at the house? She said yes. She lets me in. I start crying because of all these memories are flooding back of my life then when I was like 14 or younger. And it was like, and I start like getting choked up and crying. And I asked her to give her a hug, and I gave her a hug, and it was just so emotional and amazing in a happy and great way. And so it was just like, so then I told my dad, oh yeah, I stopped at the house. And Dad I think that I thought I had a shitty childhood. I don't think I had a shitty childhood. I wouldn't change it for the world. But so he goes, oh, you cried. So you did have a good childhood. You did love it there. And I said, well, it was all the things that, I went through there. Like, I remember singing Return of Bruno was a video that Bruce Willis came out with. And Bruno was his alter ego that he sings. And it was on HBO. I recorded it, and I would play that, and I would dress like him. I would turn my hat a little sideways, and I would sing and perform in front of the TV. And my dad got home and said, why don't you go outside and play like a real boy and not like a gay boy? I don't know what he thought I was, but I was like, because I'm having fun. I'm enjoying this. And then same thing with, we recorded Back to the Future. I used to watch Back to the Future over and over again. I even tried to sleep in the same way that he slept, with his arm behind his back. And one day I had some peanut brittle that I even left by my bed, and tried to sleep in my jacket. Even tried to buy a jean jacket just like his. Couldn't find the exact one. I had that skateboard, and I could kick myself for not. I had the Voltaire skateboard, and it was that exact one. I didn't even realize it until years later. I was like, oh, that's that skateboard. And then I got rid of it and was like, why did I get rid of that skateboard? Anyway, so my question is, so when I tell Joe we should watch these old shows, we should do a podcast on Perfect Strangers, and Joe says, no, I didn't like the show 30 years ago, and I don't like it now. When I tell Chip we should do a podcast about Airwolf, and Chip says no. And when I tell Sean about all these other shows, Sean says no. When I say Charles in Charge, Sean said, you know what? I like that show. We should do that. So we're going to do that, even though, nobody wants to do it except me and Sean. But it's just something that I really enjoy, is watching these old films. And I realized in the Instagram, I gave a shout out to Joe Merle, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, from Those Movie Guys podcast. And it was a thing of that I have always loved movies, that I still to this day go to 2 or 3 movies a week, because me and the wife have the movie pass. It's $10 a month, and you can go once a day to a movie, and I'm off 3 days a week. So we either go those 3 days or at least 2 days. So like this week we went and saw, what did we go see? This week we only went once, I think. We saw Tag. Last week, though, we went and saw Sicario, and before that we saw Jurassic Park, The Fallen Kingdom. So Sicario was good. Not as good as the first one. I really liked that first one. The second one was good, but not as good, I don't feel. It was still good. You should still watch it. And Tag was funnier than I thought it would be. So that was cool. And then at the end, they show all the real guys who were older. I thought they'd be kind of their age, like in the movie. But no, the guys are like in their 60s or mid 60s. So it's kind of funny. But they have video of that at the end of them playing the tag. Playing the tag. I do sound old. The other one was we go to Alamo Draft House. They have really good food, except my wife doesn't like. The hot dog was no good, and she had patty melt before, and that was no good. But I had they have, you can order your food at your table. I know it's not new, but over there at Alamo Draft House is all about the movie experience. So they have a thing up above, that reads across the screen, turn off your phones. You should not be on your phone. If you're on the phone and you get a complaint, you only get one warning, and then you're booted out of the theater. So, you make sure to do all that and put your phone away, and then you're good, which is awesome because I hate people on their phones during a movie. The other thing, though, was I think they didn't know what to really play during Tag, but in the beginning, they won't play. They have like your trailers, like your regular trailers, but before your movie starts, they just have little videos of, they had some Indian action film and from India, like silly action stuff and like a silly car chase, like all this funny stuff, and it was just funny and creative. And my wife goes, "This is stupid," and I go, "No, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be funny and silly." And she's like, "Oh, okay." So they just do that, and then in the halls, like they have movie posters. This is why I love it. They have old movie posters there of. They had a really cool. I can't even think of it now. Big Trouble in Little China. They had Making the Grade poster. They had a Dragnet poster from the Tom Hanks movie. They had Volunteers with Tom Hanks. Like all these old movie posters. And sometimes they'll play old movies there. And what is really cool that I've gotten into now because of my love, I've always been into this. So I'm sitting right now, and I'm sorry that I'm on a tangent, and I'm sorry if all that before was boring. But anyway, I'm in my podcast studio right now. And my podcast studio is a spare bedroom, of course. It's not an official studio, but on the wall, I have one wall that it's like my Quentin Tarantino wall, kind of. I mean, it is, but then I have a True Romance poster on the other wall. But so it's got like a promotional thing for Death Proof. It's got a mini poster for Planet Terror and Death Proof. The Death Proof promotional thing is of Kurt Russell. It's got a Reservoir Dogs poster that I bought like pretty much right after Pulp Fiction was out, or a little bit after that. That's a bigger poster. And then when Colleen and I went and saw the road show of Hateful Eight, we got these books of all the making of and all cool pictures inside. And in the center of it was, you would get a different one depending on which one you got. And what I got was Kurt Russell. Her and I actually both got the Kurt Russell one. So I pulled that centerfold out and put that up on the wall. So it's Kurt Russell from Hateful Eight. Then up here on the wall, because I'm getting at this for a reason, because my wife made a comment to me. So on the wall here, I have The Way of the Gun poster. It's a yellow poster, the old original. And that's a great movie if nobody's seen it. The Way of the Gun is on Netflix, I believe. The Long Kiss Goodnight is done by Shane Black, who's doing the new Predator, which Sean doesn't think will be good. I'm hoping it'll be good. But Joe and I love Shane Black, Long Kiss Goodnight, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and Nice Guys. Then I have a Switchblade Sisters poster up here, which is more because I like those 70s exploitation films. What I really love is Coffee and Foxy Brown. Like, those are two of my favorites. But this Switchblade Sisters, I was working at the video store when Quentin Tarantino was releasing his Rolling Thunders pictures. It was brought to you by Miramax, but it was his own little thing, and he would put out these little movies that he grew up on, and one of them was this one that he really liked. So I got the poster, and I took it home because we didn't put it up in the store. So I have this, but I'll probably be taking it down, and I'm going to be putting up a Foxy Brown or a Coffee poster. And then next to that, I have a From Dusk Till Dawn that was a poster that is to be put on a light box. So on the other side of it, it's backwards. That when I was working, before I became manager of that video store, when I was working there, the assistant manager told me that he used to work at a movie theater, and he gave me From Dusk Till Dawn movie poster. So I have that, which I love. The dialogue in From Dusk Till Dawn is great, especially that opening scene of them robbing the convenience store. And then under that, I have a Star Wars poster that's kind of original. It's like old school kind of artwork type thing. It's Leia shooting and Luke holding on to the rope to get ready to swing across, and then Ben Kenobi on the bottom, and Han Solo, and then the land speeder and Jawas, and all this kind of amalgamation of everything together. And then behind me, I have, excuse me for turning around, I have a Nightmare on Elm Street, like 3D type of poster that Sergio Navette got me. It's like hard plastic, but it's got the Freddy's glove sticking out, like when he stuck out over the wall while she was laying in bed. So it's Nancy in bed, and then the glove is stuck out like right over her face, and then there's a little shiny spot, that's a plastic star that looks like it's shining. And then under that, I have that I bought right around when Superman vs. Batman came out, and it's a Superman double feature of it says Superman double feature, Batman, the world's greatest detective, joins forces with the Man of Steel to become the mightiest team on Earth. And then it's Luke saying, it's Luke, it's Superman saying, Lois is in danger. This is a job for Superman. And Batman says, no, this is a job for Batman. Boom, boom. Anyway, and then next to that, I have my dad got me this guy at the bar used to do drawings, and he did a drawing of from True Grit. He would do drawings of famous actors or characters, and so it was from True Grit with Jeff Bridges. So I got that up there. Underneath that, Dad also got from Cat Ballou. It's Lee Marvin on the horse, and him and the horse are like passed out against a wall. It's a drawing of that. And then my cousin's artwork under that. And then next to that is a big sideways poster of True Romance, Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, a Bonnie and Clyde for the 90s. So it's really cool. And that was the first movie that I showed my wife when we were on our date. So the whole point of me telling you about all that, and then over what I don't have on the other walls that I don't have up because this room is full of stuff, is I have a Mylar type shiny, giant, pretty big poster of Spider-Man and one of Captain America. And then I got a smaller one of Captain America that's like drawing, looks like one of those propaganda posters. And it's from, but it's a little 3D. And it's from when Toys R Us was going out of business, and we got that for a good deal. And then I also have What Movie, Whose Line is a poster that I got from Blockbuster a long time ago. And that shows Joe and I used to always do movie lines. We still do. You do movie lines and you remember what movie it's from and, all this stuff. So my point being that I've always loved movies. I'm surrounded by movies, but yet on my podcast I got away from movies. I talk about movies a little bit, but sometimes Joe and Sean don't talk about them as much as I do. And I know that Sean watches movies sometimes, but not as much. So my point being, I'm going to talk movies more because I love movies. And I've realized that this is the whole reason why I started the podcast was let's talk about movies. When Sergio was on the show, we would talk movies. And so, now with, sometimes I'll go, Joe, what'd you watch? Nothing. Hey, Sean, what'd you watch? Nothing. So that was my point. So I'm gonna get back to that, and like I said, do my Celluloid Heart, every other week on the opposite weeks that I do this show. So anyway, so thank you everyone. I hope you enjoyed everything that I talked about today on my Solo podcast. Speaking of Solo, if you want to review, Solo is a movie that's good. If it's at Redbox, when it comes out and you want to rent it and watch it. Is it a movie that we needed? No. Is Boba Fett a movie that we need? I don't really think so. But the Bounty Hunter thing will be cool if it follows his Bounty Hunter stuff. Is the Ben Kenobi movie one that we need? I don't think so. Just this morning, I watched Last Jedi again, and I was really hoping that I was like, no, I need to love this. Like I like that they went against everything, but I'm wondering, and I get their point. Like it's not your same. Like everything good must die. Everything whatever. But Kylo even says like your whatever what you knew was dead. But I'm just wondering how this third one's going to be. If they're going to destroy the Millennium Falcon, are they going to kill Chewie? Are they going to kill everybody and then just be like, okay, that movie's done? Or are they going to end it? I guess they'll end it like a Return of Jedi. Have everybody singing. That'll be the end, and you'll never see them again. And they'll make an announcement that we'll never see these people again. Although, it is Disney. Because sometimes you think, like, maybe we got too much superhero movies. Maybe we got too much Star Wars. I never thought I would say that. But I remember in 1983, I was so sad that was the last Star Wars movie we were ever going to get. And in 1983 also was when it was like View to a Kill was the last James Bond movie we were going to get. And I was sad because they were like, Roger Moore's stepping down, no more James Bond. I was like, what? Because I was still kind of young, so I didn't get it. I'm 12. I was like, man, that sucks. And then in 1986 or 7, whatever, when Joe and I went and saw Living Daylights, I was like, cool, he's back. And Joe was like, that sucked. And then 99 or 89, I think, was License to Kill. Because I was working at the drive-in movie theater. Because it was going to be called License Revoked, but they changed it. But anyway, okay, that's my show. Hope you enjoyed it. Please look us up on iTunes and give us a rate and review, or subscribe to us if you're not subscribed. And normally on this show I have a co-host, but I can do it by myself. I'm not afraid. You can't put me in a box. I can do whatever I want to do. Anyway, send us an email at it'skindofafunnypodcast@gmail.com. Go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/it'skindofafunnypodcast. On Twitter, I'm under either Phil the Movie Man or for the podcast, it's kind of a funny pod. And then on Instagram, it's under It's Kind of a Funny Podcast. So check me out in all those things. And until 2 weeks from now, I will see you whenever I see you. Whatever that meant, I don't know. But everybody have a good one and be excellent to each other. Thanks.